Folks, I don't know what to say. I say things like Jesus is coming soon. I say you can't make this stuff up. There's all kinds of things that I say on a regular basis. And I think I just got to come up with a new phrase because this is just unbelievable. So you guys know this. Obviously, we've been talking about it, but you know that the UAE entered into a normalization agreement with Israel. What's interesting is the fact that many people said that it would fall apart after the president left office. President Trump left office, after the prime minister of Israel left office. They thought it just wouldn't stand. Yet, a few weeks back, we see Israel putting their embassy in the UAE. And folks, just a few days ago, we know that the UAE set up their embassy in Israel. And it's funny because there's all kinds of things going on where there's upheaval over it. The Jordanians are mad. The Palestinians are mad. All kinds of people are mad. And the UAE is telling all of them to get lost. I mean, forgive me, they're doing it in a very political way. But in essence, they're saying, we really don't care. They're actually beginning to speak up with respect to their peace with Israel, or their normalization agreement with Israel. And it almost seems like, and I could be wrong, it almost seems like they're supporting Israel. And now you've got Saudi Arabia who's saying, we want to start having these types of talks with Israel, of course, which it's not a surprise because the UAE could never enter into a normalization agreement with Israel if that was not the case. If the Saudi Arabian family did not, the Saudi Arabian royal family did not say it's okay. So we know that this kind of thing is well on its way and it's happening. And it seems as though the relationship is strengthening. Now, this means one thing and one thing only. God's word is true. God's word is real. Over 20 years ago, the same nations that are making peace with Israel were actually enemies with Israel. And the ones that are enemies with Israel were friends with Israel. But God's word told us the truth. God's word said that these nations would end up making peace with Israel, and that they would not only make peace, but they would speak on Israel's behalf when they are attacked by Gog, the leader of Russia, with Russia, Iran, and all those many other nations that we talk about in Ezekiel chapter 38. Folks, this is happening. Look, Jesus is coming soon. I don't know if you guys can see this. God is setting up the stage for all of this stuff to be happening. And I want you guys to understand how radically significant it is for the UAE to set up an embassy smack dab in the middle of Israel. Understand how significant this is, guys. If I were to tell you that this would happen, 5 months ago or a year ago, you would say that's crazy. No way. Even with the Abraham Accords being signed, a lot of people would say, no way. But God has made it eminently clear that these would be nations that would be in a good relationship with Israel as we approach the final days. And folks, that's what we're seeing. God's word is true. And listen, there is a lot to talk about here, and we're going to be talking about some of the nuances related to this in the live show that I do later this week. But folks, this is incredible. You've got to understand the geopolitical shifting that's going on right now in Israel. And I will simply say a lot of this is related to Iran. We'll talk about it, I think, in the live show that I do tomorrow. You guys will love it. But folks, this is unbelievable. God is on the move. The Bible is true. Jesus is coming back soon. Don't forget it. We've got a lot to look forward to because, folks, things are happening and we need to be excited about God's word. He never gets it wrong. And this stuff is exciting. God bless you guys.